not about man finding God, because you can't find God. You keep looking for him, you'll never find him. Salvation, on the other hand, is about God finding man. And watch this, what blows my mind is it's not because he didn't know where we were, because he's omniscient. He's also omnipresent. It means he can be everywhere at the same time. But it is because he wanted us to wake up and realize that we needed to be found. And so you ought to thank God that God found you in your sin, in your dirt, in your mess, in your hell, and God picked you up in the midst of what you were in. Because watch this, you could have, should have, and would have died in what you were in, but God. And you ought to thank God, praise goes right there. You ought to thank God right there that he found you right in the nick of time. So 1 Peter 5:7 tells us to cast. Anybody that goes fishing, you know what casting means. It is a fishing term. It's a cast. Now, you don't really know what's going to happen when you cast it out there. You may catch a fish, you may not catch a fish, but you are to cast. Now, the difference in this situation is when you cast, you know where it's going. And you know who's going to catch it when you cast it. And I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, when you cast your cares on him, he's able because he cares for you. And so that's why when you cast it, don't go back to it, but leave it there. Because the reality of it is, I think I might as well get ready to get up off this manuscript because God is taking me in another direction this morning. But brothers and sisters, I'm reminded of a situation with the disciples while they're out on the sea. Mark chapter number 4, you'll read the story. They're out on the sea. This is not the issue in the situation where Jesus comes walking to them on the water. No, this is the situation where he's on the boat. Yes, sir. I'll say that again so you can get it. He is on the boat. Now, by that fact, there should have been no fear when the storm broke out. He is on the boat. Jesus is on the boat in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. He's knocked out cold. He's gone. He's dead to the world. He is asleep on that pillow. And dear friends, the storm breaks out. And it's such a wonderful and great storm that, watch this, in the Greek, it's the Greek word seismos, from which we get our English words seismography, seismographer, and seismology. A seismographer is an instrument that registers the intensity of earthquakes. And so, dear friends, that storm was major. It was so major that not only did the text really point to it being an earthquake, but it also pointed to it being a hurricane. And Jesus, in the midst of this earthquake and hurricane, is in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. Now, I've never heard of people being in the midst of a storm, in an earthquake, in a hurricane, and they are able to go to sleep. But Jesus is in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. The disciples, they've been out on the sea many times before, experienced many situations like that before, but this one must have been real bad because they got scared, they got upright, and the text says that they called for him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? 2013 version, Negro, you don't really care that we about to die. They were wondering, God, where are you? Well, he was already on the boat. He's in the hinder part of the ship, sleep on the pillow. He gets up, he rebukes the winds and the waves, says, peace be still. And then he rebukes the disciples by saying, oh, ye of little faith, why did you doubt? The reality is I was already on the boat. Now let me blow your mind with something real quick. Do you really think that God was going to let the boat sink with Jesus in it? That in and of itself should have calmed them, but not only that, let me get deep and theological and spooky on you real quick. How in the world can water sink water? Because I do believe Jesus said he is the water of life. And all I want to drop on you real quick is when you go through the storm, here's what you need to do. Go to sleep and tell God, you got this. When I wake up, I'm looking forward to it being finished. Because he's able to turn situations around. Is there anybody here that knows that he will? Holler back at me if you hear me and say, I know he will. So he says, trust. I gotta move. He says, trust in the Lord. So not only am I just trusting, putting all of my care, all of my concern, all of my belief on the Lord, but I'm trusting in somebody. This ain't just going nowhere. It's not hitting the ceiling and coming back down. No, it's going in a direction. And when you say, Lord, dear friends, I want to help you understand something. Don't say it if you don't mean it. To suggest that he's the Lord of your life means that he has total, complete, uninhibited access to everything in your life. In other words, nothing is off limits to God when it comes to your life. And for many of us, that ain't even the case. For many of us, we only trust in the Lord when things get overwhelming for us or when things get too hard for us to even be able to bear. But the reality is, he says, trust in your master because your master's got you covered. He knows what he's doing. He's been God a long time. He's been in many situations like this before. So why not trust him? You trust people. And you keep finding out how that seems to turn out for you. It never seems to pan out the way you want it to pan out. But every time you trust in the Lord, it works out exactly as it's supposed to work out. Why? Because God can be trusted in the trials and tribulations of your life. So he says, trust in the Lord. But then he says, lean not. Now, that word lean actually in the Hebrew complements the word trust. They're really the same word. And when you read the definitions in the Hebrew, they're really the same definitions. They are really telling us, number one, that we ought to, make sure that our trust is pointed in the right direction. But the next thing is that we ought to make sure that we're leaning not in the wrong direction. That's why he says, lean not. Because the reality is many of us lean toward the wrong people and toward the wrong things. He says, to your own understanding. How many of us rely and trust in our own mind and we keep messing ourselves up because we think we're so right? It wouldn't be so many divorces if we actually started talking to God and trusting in the Lord. It wouldn't be so many young people that are stranded and straggled in life's situations and circumstances, wondering and wondering how they're going to make it through life if they would just trust in the Lord. Many of us, we do ourselves an injustice, really, when we try to put everything on us as if we are smart enough to even handle it. Because the reality is, when you think you're smart, you find out how dumb you really are. I've been there before, trusting in my own self, trying to think that I knew everything, and then come to find out, no, the more I think I know, the more I find out I don't really know. And the reality is that's why we ought to trust in the Lord and not lean to our own understanding, because our minds are weak, they are feeble, and they are finite, whereas God's mind is infinite or infinite. In other words, God knows everything when you know nothing. He says, in all your ways. Verse number 6. Word in the Hebrew, direct. I like how it kind of correlates with the word direct in the English. What it means is, it means a going, it means a walk, it means a journey, it means a path, it means a road, a mode, a manner, a course, a way in life, a lot in life. And this is why I had to pause here to say this. It also means worship. So really what he's saying is, in all of your worship, because dear friends, worship is not just relegated to Sunday morning. Worship is not just relegated to Wednesday night. The reality is, worship is not even what you do in here on Sunday morning and Wednesday night. Worship is what you do when you get up out of here. That's why in a lot of Baptist churches you'll see where it says enter to worship and depart to serve. The reality is many of us don't even get that really our serving is our worship. Let me drop something else on you. For those of you that think that the slow music that we seem to like to play in church nowadays, that's worship music. No, it's not. Worship music is not slow music, and fast music is not praise music. Music is music. The reality is, it has nothing to do with the difference of the beat. It doesn't have anything to do with crescendo or decrescendo. What it has everything to do with is this. When you leave out of here, and are you telling anybody else about Jesus? And is your life a living testament that there really is a God? Because the sad part about many young people, even in church nowadays, is that we live lives as if there is no God. And we wonder why our friends don't want to come to church or don't want to get to know God. Well, they watch what you do. And if you live any kind of way, there's no way possible that your friends are going to give their lives to the Lord. Watch this. You can't smoke weed with them and then try to tell them to come to church. You want to know why? Because they're going to call you a hypocrite. You cannot do everything that they do and think that you're going to get the same results. No, you got to let your light shine. What I've discovered is that many of us would rather do what the text finishes saying by hiding it under a bushel. Many of us don't want to let our light shine because we are ashamed of the God that we serve. We think that salvation is not fun. We think that you can't live any kind of decent life when you're saved. We think that there are so many rules and regulations that you got to live by, and you can't have fun in salvation. Well, I hate to burst your bubble and be the bearer of good news, but dear friends, I've been saved since the age of 7, been preaching since the age of 10. I'm 24 years old now, and I've had fun in my life. I have not lived this concealed life as I was locked up and I couldn't do anything. No, I had fun and still have fun. But there's a difference in the kind of fun that I like versus the kind of fun that a whole lot of other folk like. Because their fun leads to ruin and destruction, but my fun leads to life and peace. The reality is I want to see Jesus one day, so I'm not about to let anything inhibit me or stop me from getting to Jesus. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he will direct. Solomon blows my mind. I'm done. Solomon blows my mind by using, in reality, what is called a prepositional clause. In logic and set theory, there is what is called an if-then statement or an if-then clause. So Solomon is really suggesting to us, as I close so you can understand the verse a little bit better. If you trust in the Lord, if you do not lean on your own understanding, and if you